Cold CEO fired his secretary, then burned with jealousy when she smiled at another man. Hello everyone, before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's get back to our main character. The fluorescent lights hummed softly above the 30th floor as Maddie Hart clasped the edge of her desk, steadying her breath. It was barely past 7 a.m., the city outside still waking, but inside coal industries everything already pulsed with pressure. She had worked here for 2 years, quiet, efficient, the kind of person who held an entire department together without anyone noticing. Except one man. Ethan Cole. Her boss. A name that carried the same chill as the marble lobby downstairs. She heard his office door open behind her. His footsteps were measured, crisp, the way you'd expect from a man who planned every minute of his life with machine-like precision. "Ms. Hart," he said, voice low and flat. She froze for half a second before turning. "Good morning, Mr. Cole." His expression didn't change. It rarely did. But today, something felt different, as if the air tightened between them. He placed a file on her desk. The corner of the folder aligned perfectly with the edge, Ethan's signature obsession with precision. "I reviewed yesterday's schedule," he said. "You marked my meeting with the legal team at 3:30. Maddie nodded. "Yes, sir. It was supposed to be at 3 o'clock. Her heart skipped. "Sir, you verbally confirmed 3:30. I wrote it exactly as you said." A subtle pause. His jaw clicked once, barely noticeable. "Pack your things." The words hit her harder than any warning could. No explanation. No chance to defend herself. Just a verdict delivered with the cold efficiency he was famous for. She stared at him, breath caught in her throat. "Mr. Cole. I didn't do anything wrong." For a moment, maybe 1 second, his eyes flickered, as if something inside him hesitated. But the steel slid back in place. "Your pass will deactivate in 10 minutes. He turned and walked toward his office without looking back. Maddie swallowed hard, blinking against the sting rising in her eyes. 2 years of early mornings, late nights, running his entire world from behind a desk, and he dismissed her like she was nothing. She gathered her planner, the one she filled by hand because Ethan always preferred it over digital reminders. A small part of her wondered if he'd even notice it was gone. As she placed her belongings into a cardboard box, her fingers brushed something in the drawer, his silver fountain pen, the one he always used during board meetings. She must have put it there when rushing yesterday. For a moment she hesitated, wondering if she should return it. Then she closed the drawer gently. Not today. Not like this. Maddie walked toward the elevator, her badge trembling slightly between her fingers. Behind her, Ethan stood inside his office, staring at the now empty desk through the glass wall. His face revealed nothing. But his grip on the edge of his desk tightened, knuckles pale, as if holding back something he'd never admit, not even to himself. The elevator doors slid shut with a soft chime, sealing Maddie inside a moving silver box that reflected her shaken expression back at her. She clutched the cardboard box against her chest, feeling the faint tremble in her hands. The 30 floors down felt longer than usual, each passing number reminding her she was leaving behind a place that had consumed 2 years of her life. When the doors opened, she stepped into the lobby where the morning sunlight spilled across the polished floor. People walked past her without noticing, their footsteps echoing through the vaulted space. It felt strange to walk out with a box in her arms instead of a stack of schedules and reminders. At the revolving door, she hesitated for a breath, then pushed through, stepping into the crisp morning air. The city hummed around her, taxis rushing by, buildings towering overhead, all indifferent to the heaviness in her chest. She walked 2 blocks before stopping at a small coffee shop she used to pass every morning. The owner, a friendly older woman, noticed her through the window and waved, but Maddie pretended not to see. She did not trust her voice right now. As she continued down the street, her phone buzzed. A text from the property manager reminded her that rent was due next week. She closed her eyes for a second. Losing this job meant more than losing a paycheck. It meant losing stability, losing her routine, losing the tiny bit of control she had worked so hard for. Somewhere high above, on the 30th floor, Ethan Cole stood near the window of his office, watching the street below. His reflection hovered over the glass, expression unreadable. From this height Maddie looked small, a figure moving steadily through the current of pedestrians. He told himself he was only checking to ensure security handled the badge deactivation properly. That was the reasonable explanation. The one a CEO would give. But as she disappeared around the corner, a quiet unease stirred inside him, something he had not felt in years. His office felt too still, too empty. He moved back to his desk, expecting to see her planner neatly aligned next to the monitor like it always was. Instead the surface was bare. He looked at the space longer than he meant to. A knock sounded at the door. His deputy, Colin, stepped inside holding a tablet. "Good morning, sir. The quarterly review meeting has been moved up by 1 hour. Should I inform your secretary?" Ethan did not look up. "I no longer have a secretary." Colin blinked. "I see. Should I request a temporary replacement from human resources?" Ethan lifted his eyes slowly. "Not yet." Colin nodded and left the room, but his puzzled expression lingered in the air. Ethan turned back toward his schedule. 10 minutes passed before he realized something was wrong. His meeting reminders were a mess. The color coding was inconsistent. The flow of tasks felt disjointed. For a man who lived by structure, it was like trying to read a page with half the words missing. He opened his drawer for his silver pen, the one he used for signing priority documents. The drawer was empty. A faint breath left his chest. He remembered Maddie's habit of storing any loose pen in her drawer temporarily when she organized his desk. It was probably still there. He closed the drawer gently. The quiet room pressed in on him, the space where Maddie's desk had always anchored the rhythm of his mornings now feeling strangely hollow. Ethan tried to dismiss it. She had been one employee among hundreds. Secretaries were replaceable. Systems were replaceable. Order was replaceable. He repeated the words in his mind like a mantra. But even as he turned back to his paperwork, he felt the truth rising beneath the surface. He had made a mistake. And for the first time in a long time, the certainty he relied on began to crack. By late afternoon the city had warmed slightly, the sun slipping through tall buildings in narrow golden stripes. Maddie sat at a small wooden table inside the community job center, her cardboard box tucked against her legs. She had walked here with the faint hope of finding something temporary, anything to keep her afloat until she figured out what came next. A counselor handed her a stack of forms, and she thanked him with a polite smile that did not reach her eyes. She tried to focus, but her mind wandered to the familiar rhythm of her days at Cole Industries. Scheduling, coordinating, anticipating Ethan's needs before he spoke them. It had taken her months to learn his patterns, and once she mastered them, the job had become almost instinctive. And now it was gone. She exhaled slowly, filling in another line on the form. On the other side of the desk, the counselor glanced at her resume. "You have very strong experience. You managed operations for a major executive. Have you considered applying at other corporations?" She hesitated. "I will, but I need something soon." He nodded, understanding the unspoken urgency. When she left the building, the crisp air felt sharper than it had that morning. Her phone buzzed again. Another reminder. A utility bill. She tucked the phone back into her bag and kept walking, unsure whether she was heading home or simply trying to outrun the weight in her chest. Meanwhile, on the 30th floor of Cole Industries, Ethan stood at the center of the conference room table, trying to focus on the quarterly review. Charts and numbers filled the screen, but he heard the faintest echo of Maddie's voice inside his thoughts, the way she used to quietly remind him of talking points or slide transitions right before he stood up. Without her, the entire meeting felt jagged. At one point a senior manager questioned a timeline. Ethan reached automatically for a note Maddie would have prepared. His hand met only the cool glass of the table. Colin cleared his throat gently. "Sir, the document you are looking for, it used to be organized by your former secretary." Ethan did not answer. The meeting resumed, but his focus drifted. When it finally ended, he returned to his office, loosening his tie in a rare sign of irritation. He glanced toward the hallway where Maddie's desk used to be. An intern sat there now, papers scattered, confusion on her face as she read through the digital schedule. Ethan paused in the doorway. "Is something wrong?" he asked. The intern straightened quickly. "I am sorry, Mr. Cole. I am trying to update your calendar, but I cannot find the pattern. Your reminders are set up in a very specific way. It is like a system inside a system." Ethan exhaled quietly. Yes. It was. She waited for instructions, a bit overwhelmed. He walked away without offering any. In the elevator, his reflection looked colder than usual, but beneath it was something unsettled. Something unwelcome. Something unfamiliar. Later, as he stepped out onto the street, he caught sight of a familiar figure across the avenue. Maddie was standing outside a bus stop, hugging her planner to her chest while adjusting the strap of her bag. The golden light caught her hair, turning it warm at the edges. For a moment he simply watched, hidden behind a stream of passing cars. She looked tired, but she also looked free. It stung more than he could explain. Ethan took a single step toward her, then stopped. He told himself there was no reason to approach. She no longer worked for him. Their professional relationship had ended. But as she boarded the bus and the doors closed, he felt a quiet tightening in his chest, a tightness that lingered long after the bus pulled away and disappeared into the evening traffic. The next morning arrived with a pale blue sky, the kind that looked calm but carried a cold edge. Maddie stood inside her small apartment, adjusting the collar of her blazer in the mirror. She had barely slept, but she forced a steady breath as she grabbed her planner and stepped out the door. Today she would visit a local networking event for administrative professionals. It was not glamorous, but it was a start. Her bus ride took nearly an hour, winding through busy streets and quieter neighborhoods until the building appeared, a modest conference center with a banner that read, "Careers for Administrative Excellence." Inside, clusters of attendees moved between tables, exchanging business cards and hopeful smiles. Some companies had flashy booths, others simple pamphlets, but all of them offered possibilities. Maddie approached a table hosted by a staffing agency. A representative greeted her warmly, asking about her background. When she explained her 2 years at Cole Industries, the woman raised her eyebrows. "You worked for Ethan Cole directly?" Maddie nodded. "Yes, I managed his schedule, communications, and operations support." The representative leaned in slightly. "That is valuable experience. You should highlight that. Many executives need someone who can function at that level." Maddie offered a polite smile, but a part of her tightened inside. Talking about her work there felt like pressing on a bruise. Still, she collected information, listened carefully, and noted potential openings. An hour later, she stepped into the main hall where refreshments were served. A man near one of the tables gave her a friendly wave. He looked around her age, with a clean gray suit and an approachable smile. "You must be Maddie Hart," he said. "I saw your name on the registration list." She blinked in surprise. "Yes. And you are?" "Ryan Blake," he said with a light nod. I am an attorney for a partner firm, Blake and Archer. We work with several companies in this region. She remembered hearing that name among the partnership files she once organized. Ryan motioned to the neighboring table. I heard you talking earlier. Managing operations for a high-level executive is not simple. That is impressive. She felt her cheeks warm slightly. Thank you. I tried my best. Your best shows, he said with an easy grin. I am actually looking for someone part-time to help with administrative coordination for a new project. Would you be open to a conversation? Hope flickered inside her, small but real. Before she could answer, laughter erupted behind them from a group of attendees. The sound startled her, and she instinctively moved closer to Ryan to make room. From outside the glass walls of the conference hall, Ethan stood still, his hand on the door handle. He had come to speak at a luncheon hosted across the building, but when he spotted Maddie through the glass, his steps faltered. She was smiling at Ryan. Not the polite smile she gave strangers, but a warm, genuine one, the kind he had rarely seen directed at anyone in the office. Something in Ethan's chest tightened in a way that felt unfamiliar and unwelcome. He watched Ryan gesture animatedly as Maddie laughed softly. She looked lighter, freer, as if the weight she carried yesterday had already begun to lift. Ethan remained outside the hall, hidden by a column, unable to turn away. Ryan was clearly interested in more than a work discussion. It was obvious in the way he leaned slightly toward her, the way he held her attention. Ethan's jaw set a fraction, a subtle line forming near his temple. He told himself he was only observing because she had been part of his team for 2 years, and naturally he was concerned about her career transition. That was the rational explanation. The one he could justify. But the longer he watched, the harder it became to ignore the quiet, heated pull rising inside him, a feeling that made no sense but refused to be dismissed. Maddie finally nodded to Ryan, agreeing to sit down with him at a nearby table. As they walked together, Ethan stepped back into the shadows, the air around him sharp with something he had not felt in years. He had let her go. And now, for the first time, he was realizing what that truly meant. Ryan guided Maddie toward a quieter corner of the conference hall where a small round table overlooked a row of tall windows. Afternoon sunlight stretched across the carpet in soft patterns, warming the space with a gentle glow. Maddie set her planner beside her and smoothed the edge of her sleeve, trying to steady the flutter of nerves inside her. Ryan noticed and offered a reassuring smile. Take your time. We are just talking, he said, his tone easy and genuine. It had been a long time since someone spoke to her without urgency, without deadlines, without the weight of an entire executive's world resting on her shoulders. She exhaled slowly and nodded. I appreciate that. Ryan opened a folder and slid it toward her. We are launching a new outreach initiative for small businesses. I need someone organized, attentive, and comfortable handling complex scheduling. Your experience is exactly what we need. A spark of hope warmed her chest. It sounds interesting. I would love to hear more. As they talked, Ethan remained just outside the hall, standing near a decorative column where he could see without being noticed. He had no reason to be here. He had no role in this event. Yet he stayed, listening to distant pieces of her laughter drifting through the open doors. He forced himself to step back and leave, telling himself it was none of his business, but every step felt heavier than the last. He ended up walking the long perimeter of the conference building, trying to clear the tension in his chest. Inside, Maddie and Ryan continued their conversation. He asked about her work style, her strengths, the tasks she enjoyed most. She answered honestly, her confidence growing with each passing minute. Finally, Ryan leaned back in his chair, impressed. Maddie, to be honest, someone with your skill level should be managing an entire operations team, not just a single executive schedule. She blinked, surprised. I have never thought of it that way. Well, you should, he said warmly. The right employer will see your value. His words settled over her like a soft blanket. For so long she had felt invisible, buried behind someone else's priorities. Hearing someone acknowledge her potential made something inside her straighten again. As Ryan packed his folder, he asked, "Would you like to meet next week to discuss the role officially? Maybe over coffee?" Maddie smiled, grateful and relieved. "Yes, I would like that." When they stood, Ryan offered his hand. She shook it, and his friendly grin made her laugh gently. At that exact moment, Ethan reappeared at the opposite end of the hall. He had circled back without meaning to, drawn by something he refused to name. He stopped the moment he saw them. Maddie laughing. Ryan stepping closer. The warm glow around them. The silent understanding between two people who had met only hours ago but somehow already stood in easy rhythm. Something sharp and unfamiliar flickered behind Ethan's steady composure. He watched as Ryan walked Maddie toward the exit, his hand lightly guiding her around a crowded table. Maddie glanced up at Ryan with appreciation, her smile soft and unguarded. Ethan's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly, but enough for him to feel the strain. He could not explain why it unsettled him. All he knew was that Maddie had never smiled at him like that. Not once in 2 years. As she and Ryan stepped out into the late afternoon light, Ethan remained rooted in place, hidden in the shadow of the hallway. The realization settled over him slowly, reluctantly, quietly. Letting Maddie go had been a mistake. But watching someone else step into the space she once filled hit him in a way he had not been prepared for. And for the first time in years, Ethan Cole felt something he could neither control nor ignore. The next week arrived with a light drizzle that misted the city in a soft gray veil. Maddie stood outside a cozy cafe tucked between a bookstore and a florist, hugging her planner close while she waited for Ryan. She felt a quiet sense of hope in the air, gentle but steady, the kind that made her breathe a little deeper. Ryan arrived a moment later, carrying a warm smile that eased her nerves. He led her inside, where the air smelled of roasted coffee beans and fresh pastries. They settled at a corner table, and as they spoke about the role, the responsibilities, and the potential growth, Maddie felt something she had not felt in a long time, confidence. She could do this. She deserved something more than just survival. Ryan slid a printed offer across the table. "This is not the final version, but it is close. Look it over and tell me what you think." Maddie opened the document, her eyes widening slightly as she scanned the details. The hours were manageable, the pay steady, and the environment supportive. It was everything she needed to get her life back on track. "It is wonderful," she said softly. "Thank you for believing in me." "It is not belief," Ryan said with a gentle shrug. "It is reality. You have talent, Maddie. I am just giving you a place to use it." As they shared a light laugh, neither noticed the dark sedan that slowed across the street. Inside the car, Ethan sat in the back seat, his laptop open but forgotten. He had been en route to a midday investor meeting when he saw Maddie through the window. The car came to a stop at a red light, giving him a clear view of her sitting with Ryan. She looked relaxed, at ease, her smile soft in that way he had seen only recently, never when she worked for him. The sight sent a soft, unwelcome pressure through his chest. His driver glanced at him through the rearview mirror. "Sir. Is everything all right?" Ethan closed the laptop. "Change of plans. Pull over at the corner." The driver obeyed, and Ethan stepped out into the drizzle without an umbrella, ignoring the light mist on his suit. He crossed the sidewalk toward the cafe but stopped just outside the window when he saw Ryan leaning closer, pointing at something on the offer sheet. Maddie laughed again, her eyes crinkling with genuine ease. The warmth between them was unmistakable, natural in a way Ethan had never managed to create with her. He stood still, his expression neutral but his eyes locked on the scene. He was not sure how long he remained there, watching without moving. Eventually he stepped back, distancing himself before either of them could notice. He returned to his car with a quiet breath and instructed the driver to continue. But the investor meeting that followed was a disaster. Ethan misread updates, repeated questions, and seemed distracted in ways his team had never witnessed. One investor even asked if he was feeling well. "I am fine," Ethan answered sharply, though the certainty in his voice sounded false even to himself. Back in his office later that afternoon, he tried to focus on the contracts spread across his desk. But every time he looked at the numbers, he saw Maddie's smile reflected in the cafe window. He pushed the files away and leaned back in his chair, closing his eyes. It made no sense. Maddie worked for him. That was all. That was supposed to be all. So why did it unsettle him so deeply to see her choosing a new direction, a new opportunity, a new person? As the rain eased outside and the city lights began to glow, Ethan opened his eyes with a quiet, reluctant realization. He had not been watching her because he needed to check on her career. He had been watching because he missed her. And admitting that, even silently, shook something inside him that he had kept locked away for a very long time. The following days moved in a blur for Maddie, a mixture of cautious optimism and steady determination. She reviewed Ryan's offer carefully, highlighted sections, and even allowed herself to imagine what life might look like if she accepted. A stable schedule, a supportive environment, and room to grow. For the first time in weeks, she felt like her future was expanding instead of collapsing inward. On Thursday morning, she met Ryan again at the same cafe to clarify final details. He greeted her with his easy smile, holding open the door as she stepped inside. The warmth of the cafe wrapped around them, the smell of cinnamon pastries floating through the air. "I want to make sure this role fits what you want long-term," Ryan said as they found a table near the window. "You deserve the right opportunity, not just any opportunity." Maddie smiled softly, touched by his sincerity. "Thank you. I really appreciate that. It means more than you know." As they reviewed the schedule, a subtle energy grew between them, gentle and unforced. He listened carefully, offered thoughtful answers, and encouraged her to ask questions. She found herself laughing at one of his light remarks, the kind of laugh that lifted from somewhere deeper, freer. At that exact moment, on the opposite side of the street, Ethan stepped out of a black car, holding a folder under his arm. He had a meeting in a building nearby and had intended to walk straight inside. But when he glanced toward the cafe window, everything inside him paused. Maddie was there again. And she was laughing with Ryan. The sight struck him with quiet, unwelcome force. Her smile was warm, open, nothing like the polite, controlled smiles she wore every day in his office. He stood still on the sidewalk as people flowed around him, unaware of the storm forming just beneath his composed expression. Inside the cafe, Ryan leaned closer. "I have another idea for you. I think you would thrive leading the coordination team for the outreach division. It is a step up from what we discussed, but I believe you can handle it." Maddie blinked in surprise, her heart swelling with a mix of excitement and disbelief. "A leadership role?" "A modest one," he said with a light laugh, "but yes. You have the skill set, and I think you could excel." Maddie looked down for a moment, letting the possibility settle. She had never been offered leadership before. She had always been the one behind the scenes, the one supporting someone else's vision. The idea that someone saw potential in her was almost overwhelming. Outside, Ethan took a single step toward the cafe, then stopped. He watched as Ryan pointed something out on the document, watched as Maddie's face lit up with hope. Something inside him tightened, slow and painful, like a realization arriving too late. He should have valued her more when he had the chance. He should have noticed how much she carried, how much she managed, how many fires she extinguished before they ever reached him. But he had only seen her work, not her. And now someone else was seeing her clearly. A pedestrian brushed past Ethan, jolting him slightly. It broke him from his trance. He turned away abruptly and walked toward the entrance of the building where his meeting awaited, but his steps felt uneven, his thoughts tangled. Inside the conference room, he tried to focus as his team discussed projections and analytics. But every time Maddie's laugh replayed in his mind, his concentration shattered. Colin, seated across from him, caught the subtle shifts in Ethan's expression. He frowned slightly, sensing something had changed but unable to name it. By the time the meeting ended, Ethan felt an unfamiliar heaviness in his chest. He stepped into the hallway, loosening his tie with a quiet breath. He had fired Maddie to regain control of his life, to avoid the confusion she stirred inside him. But watching her walk confidently toward a new chapter, watching another man recognize her worth, forced him to confront a truth he had ignored for too long. He had not freed himself by letting her go. He had only created an emptiness that no assistant, no schedule, no structure had been able to fill. That evening the city lights shimmered against the glass towers, casting long reflections across the wet pavement as Maddie stepped off the bus near her apartment. She felt lighter than she had in months, her mind replaying Ryan's words about leadership, potential, and possibility. She held the updated offer packet in her hands, careful not to let the drizzle touch it. Everything inside her buzzed with a cautious but rising excitement. She could actually build something new. She could actually move forward. When she reached her building, she paused under the entry light to glance through the pages one more time, her smile soft but real. 2 blocks away, Ethan sat alone in the back of his car, staring out at the blurred streetlights. He had instructed his driver to take the long route home, claiming he needed time to finish reviewing reports. But the report sat untouched beside him. His thoughts kept circling the same image, Maddie smiling beneath the warm cafe lights, her eyes bright with hope as she spoke with Ryan. The driver spoke gently. "Sir, we are approaching your residence." Ethan did not answer. Instead he leaned forward. "Turn left. Head toward Riverside Avenue." The driver hesitated but obeyed. Ethan did not fully understand why he was doing this. He only knew he was not ready to return to an empty penthouse filled with silence and unfinished thoughts. As the car turned the corner, he spotted a familiar figure near a lamppost. Maddie, holding a folder against her chest, standing in the soft glow of the building entrance. She looked peaceful, content, almost glowing from within. And something inside him cracked, quiet but undeniable. Before he could second-guess himself, Ethan opened the door and stepped out into the cool evening air. He walked closer, each step steady but tense. Maddie looked up at the sound of footsteps, her eyes widening when she recognized him. "Mr. Cole," she said, startled. He had never been on this street before, never once stepped into her world outside the office. He stopped a few feet away, his expression composed but his eyes clearly unsettled. "Maddie," he said quietly. It was the first time he had spoken her name without the weight of hierarchy attached to it. She held the folder tighter. "Why are you here?" He inhaled slowly, as if gathering words from a place he rarely visited. "I wanted to speak with you." She waited, unsure, cautious. Ethan glanced at the offer packet in her hands. "You have been meeting with Ryan Blake." It was not a question, but Maddie nodded anyway. "Yes. He offered me a role. A good one." Ethan's gaze flickered, revealing something vulnerable beneath the calm exterior. "Are you going to take it?" Maddie hesitated. "I am considering it. It is an opportunity one did not expect." He stepped closer, his voice low but steady. "You were the best operations mind I have ever worked with. Losing you damaged more than I anticipated." Her breath caught slightly. It was the closest thing to an admission she had ever heard from him. Still, she kept her voice even. "You fired me, Mr. Cole." The truth hung between them, sharp but quiet. Ethan's shoulders shifted subtly, as if absorbing the weight of it. "I know," he said. "And I regret it." Maddie blinked, stunned. Ethan Cole did not apologize. Not to employees. Not to anyone. He exhaled as if letting go of a long-held breath. I did not fire you because of a scheduling error. I fired you because he paused, searching for words he was not used to saying. Because you affected me more than you should have. Her heartbeat quickened, confusion and disbelief mixing inside her. Ethan looked down for a moment, the lamplight catching the faint tension in his jaw. I lost control. So I pushed you away. The confession landed softly but shook her all the same. She looked away briefly, trying to steady her voice. You hurt me, she whispered. Ethan's expression tightened, as if the word struck somewhere deep. I know, he said quietly. And I am sorry. A silence settled between them, filled with the sound of distant traffic and the gentle rhythm of the evening breeze. For the first time since she had met him, Ethan looked less like the untouchable executive who ruled a corporate tower and more like a man learning to face the consequences of his choices. Maddie held the offer packet a little closer, the future in her hands and her past standing in front of her. She had no answer yet. And Ethan, for once, did not demand one. The cool night breeze drifted gently between them as Maddie stood beneath the soft glow of the entry light, her fingers tightening around the offer packet while Ethan waited in a still, almost fragile silence. The weight of his confession hung in the air, real and unsettling, the kind of truth that did not fade easily. Maddie took a slow breath, trying to steady the swirl inside her. I do not understand, she said softly. Why tell me this now? After everything? Ethan looked down for a brief moment, as if gathering strength from the quiet pavement beneath his feet. When he raised his eyes again, they held a sincerity she had never seen there before. Because watching you walk away showed me what I had lost, he said. And watching someone else see your worth made me realize how blind I had been. Her heart flickered at the honesty in his voice. But another part of her, the part still tender from the way he had ended things, remained guarded. You cannot expect me to forget what happened. I am not asking you to forget, he replied gently. I am asking for a chance to make things right. Maddie looked away, her eyes settling on the quiet street. As she considered her response, a soft vibration buzzed through her phone. She glanced down and saw a message from Ryan, let me know if you want to finalize the offer tomorrow. No pressure. I want what is best for you. Her chest tightened. Her future sat on a delicate balance, one choice pulling her in a direction of new beginnings and possibility, the other tugging at a connection she had never fully understood until now. Ethan noticed the shift in her expression. Is that him? Maddie hesitated, then nodded. Yes. He has been kind. He believes in what I can do. Ethan's jaw tightened slightly, but his voice stayed low. He should believe in you. Anyone who spends 5 minutes with you would. Maddie felt a warmth build in her chest, subtle but undeniable. It was strange to hear him speak this way, without the armor of authority or distance. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Then Ethan stepped a little closer, careful not to crowd her. Maddie, he said softly, I do not want to stand in your way. If this new job is where you will thrive, I will be happy for you. Truly. But I also want you to know that I value you. Not as an employee. As a person. The sincerity in his voice cracked something inside her defenses. She looked up at him, trying to read every detail of his expression. You hurt me, she said again, quieter this time. Ethan nodded, accepting the truth without flinching. I did. And I will spend as long as it takes proving that I can be better than the man who fired you out of fear. The honesty in his words settled deep, reaching places she thought she had closed off. Maddie took a small step back, giving herself a moment of space to breathe. I need time, she whispered. Ethan nodded. Take all the time you need. She held the offer packet against her chest, looking between the pages of her potential future and the man who had just bared a part of himself he usually kept locked away. I do not know what I am choosing yet, she admitted. You do not have to, Ethan said. Not tonight. A quiet calm settled between them, peaceful and gentle. Maddie exhaled slowly, her voice barely above a whisper. Thank you for telling me the truth. Ethan met her gaze with a warm, steady sincerity. Thank you for listening. As the night deepened around them, Maddie reached for her keys, still unsure which path her heart would follow. But for the first time since losing her job, she felt clarity instead of chaos, possibility instead of fear. Ethan stepped back, giving her space, his voice soft as he said, "Good night, Maddie." She met his eyes, her own steady and thoughtful. "Good night." And as she walked inside, the door closing gently behind her, the world felt open in a way it had not felt in a very long time.